You almost fell.
I know.
On
I got
camera.
excited. I got excited.
Because that's where we're at.
Thank you. She's been at Senate meetings before. She's on next to last year. Molly Myers. She's not calling me yet.
Probably more than that. Probably more.
How'd you bring me into this? You could have said, well. That's actually
Was that a hearing?
Oh my god. She kind of ate you up, I can't even lie. She ate you the fuck up. Like,
Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for coming tonight. We are about ready to get started. Has everybody gotten a chance to scan in on the attendance form? Give you guys a few seconds to get that. All right, I will officially call to open at 6:35. Attendance will be taken on the Google form. We'll now move into a quick reminder.
This is me. This slide's a different performance. Okay. The stresses are high right now. Finals going on. There's a lot going on in the org. There's a lot going on in personal lives. I just wanted to remind everyone to take care of yourself. Just make time for prioritizing yourself. It's really important, and it'll make USG even better if we all take care of ourselves a lot. That's it. Be safe. Be happy.
Thank you. We'll now move into public comment. At this time, are there any members of the public who would like to comment? Allison, go ahead.
Okay. Hello, my name is Allison. I'm a member of the public. I would like to discuss one of the voting items tonight. So I have a proposal for 2 amendments to an act concerning the referendum procedure. The first one being, I believe, line item 1B, which currently states the referendum should be on issues affecting the UConn student body directly, should be amended to remove the word directly. The word directly can be used to shut down referendum topics on certain issues. One example might be on climate change, where it could be argued that climate change does not directly affect UConn students, but it does have many really important and indirect effects on everyone. Second, I propose the addition to specify under Section 3 the requirements to send out a referendum, that the proposed legislation/referendum must pass an internal affairs or other committee vote, so that individuals unfamiliar with USG procedures can better understand the process of creating a referendum. Additionally, if there is any other information to help individuals unfamiliar with referendum and other legislative procedures, that should be disclosed to the public and available for everyone. That's all.
Thank you, Allison. Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak? All right. We will move into our reports, and we will start off with external affairs.
Is this on? Oh yeah. How you guys doing? So External Affairs met last night. It's our last meeting of the semester. The one big thing we talked about is the pop-up clothing closet. We came up with questions for the clothing closet, so I'll read those off. So this is for us to report the results of how the pop-up goes. So, question 1, in the future, what time would you most likely visit the clothing closet? Number 2, is there something, size, color, style, etc., that you wish we had more of? Would you like to see a permanent version of the clothing closet on campus, yes or no? What do you plan to use the clothing closet for? Select all that apply. And the options are interview, work/internship, clubs, activities, formal events, course requirement, and then question 5, do you have access to a sufficient amount of professional clothing on campus? So a couple weeks back, Sydney and I had a meeting with UConn Communications and Goodwill, and so we were trying to set up a pop-up for, March? January, February, and then we'll have further conversations with administration afterwards. And that's pretty much what we got going right now, and we'll have more events next semester. So thank you to External for a great semester, had a lot of fun, and we're gonna do some more great things next semester. So thank you guys.
Does anyone have questions for Nick? All right, next Nick. Next up, we will go to Kafreel with Student Services.
So what's the deal with airline food? All right, everyone, how are we doing tonight? All right, let's see what I've been up to in the last 2 weeks. Pop-up pantry. Again, working on those survey questions in committee last night. Unfortunately, I'm not gonna read them all off. It's hard to follow that class act over there. As well as gearing up for next semester, period blocks, mental health initiatives, kind of gearing into that. A lot of working with the comms team, putting out a lot of posts. We just put out a post regarding the FAFSA. It's open. Everyone, please fill out your FAFSA. More posts about mental health and kind of advertising, dining resources, housing resources, been doing all that stuff, good stuff. Let's see, what else have I been up to? Been having a great time doing this thing. Thank you for all the committee members, great semester. Couldn't have done it without you guys. Yeah, I think that kind of really just sums it up for this Senate. Yeah. Are there any questions?
Oh yeah, any questions?
I take requests.
Encore. Give us another joke.
All right. Let's see. What is an Italian DJ's favorite sauce? Marinara. That's all I have for tonight, guys. We're live from New York on Saturday night.
Wow, thank you. Next up, OSS, Angela.
That's so crazy. I mean, that's actually
Austin. Hey besties, how are we doing? We're doing okay? When I started this, good afternoon. So I didn't pull up my report. I wrote a lot in here, so I just need to go back and see it. So, 5 pieces of legislation, guys, that I worked on. A little crazy, a little nuts. So I'm not going to go into specifics about every single piece of legislation because you'll see later today. Other than that, we confirmed a couple of dates that are in my report about some events that are coming up. I'm not sure if you really want to talk more about the pop-up snack pantry. I don't want to go too into detail about their event, but that's going to be hosted in our Supervised Lounge. There's also a Tier 3 ice cream social that is taking place this Friday with all Tier 3 organizations that are invited, yourselves included as your Tier 3 organization members. It's going to be an ice cream social with Blood and Crafts that Jose, our Tier 3 advisor, has been planning. And then, And then still working on getting those senator nameplates. So if you still don't have one, I'm really, really sorry. It's not personal, we just ran out. Like I promise, we're going to get those as soon as possible for you all. All right.
Any questions for Angela? All right. We'll move into our Chief Justice. Andy, take it away.
So I want to spend tonight talking about, I know we're coming to the end of the semester, but when we come back next semester, elections are going to be happening. So I want to spend a little bit of time talking about elections. Over break, I will be working on the elections packet for the spring election, and that will be released the day we come back for class, so whatever day that is. And then the election period itself is going to take place from March 4th, which is a Tuesday, to March 6th, which is a Thursday, so open 48 hours like the fall election was. Something in years past is the election has been held in past years right before we go on spring break. And in the spring, we usually get a lot of appeal or violations for elections. So this year, the election is 2 weeks before spring break. So the plan is the following week, which is the week of March 10th. The judiciary will be working on the violations that we get, if we get any. So I can almost guarantee you that we will know who our elected officials are before we leave for spring break, which is something that hasn't happened in a long time in USG. That's good news, yeah. Anyway, that's all that I have. If you have any questions about the election, talk to me. If you have any questions about running the election, talk to me, and yeah.
Are there any questions? All right, Speaker of the Senate. So I have been doing senator check-ins this week, which has been great to get a chance to sit down with a bunch of you and get some feedback on the semester and how things are going. Over the break, I'm going to be planning a lot of our Senate caucus stuff for next semester, along with you and Shahab. So figuring out who we want to bring in for public comment, as well as what we want to do in caucus. If anyone has any suggestions for that, please do reach out to us. Also, I apologize for not mentioning earlier that Bonnie Hannon, meeting the students who was scheduled to come today, unfortunately is sick and cannot make it tonight. Other than that, just getting things ready for the agenda tonight and making sure we are all set and wrapping things up for this semester and getting ready for the break in the spring. Does anyone have any questions? All right, we will go to the comptroller.
Hello, everybody. So over the last couple of weeks, I've been hiding in my dark corner doing our stats fact packet. I've probably sunk at least 15 hours into this, so we're voting on that today. You'll see what that looks like. Please take some time to review it and provide some comments. Or if you have any concerns or questions as well, we can address those. But this will be a team effort to do our stats fact packet, vote on it. I'll explain more later when we're actually voting on it, what that means and its significance. I've also been working on batch payroll, so that means giving everybody a raise who works for USG starting January 1st. We're also voting on that today. Honestly, not a whole lot other than that going on. It's been a lot of SASPAC work. I've been meeting with the SASPAC committee because I am on the committee to provide recommendations for the general university fee increases requested by a variety of departments. Tier 2 funding has committed a little over $800,000 out of the $1 million already. Not to worry yet because a lot of groups were requesting for the spring, so like club sports we can anticipate will be traveling in the spring has already requested everything they want for the spring. But that does mean we are approaching the time where we stop travel completely. For Tier 2 funding, we stop travel after we're $200,000 away from the cap, so that will likely be very soon, if not the next funding vote. Other than that, inventory is going well, purchasing is going well, working on ITS server, as well as our holiday party food, and finishing up Jabrill's Fuel for Finals PRs as well. So that's all I have.
Any questions for Sydney? All right, Tay, our Chief University Officer, could not make it tonight. We will move into our Vice President.
Not much to update y'all on, except we have a holiday party tomorrow, 7 p.m. in the Student Union Lounge. Gonna be really fun. We're gonna have karaoke, Jeopardy, Heads Up, and something else. Stay tuned. And then also, I'm a part of this new thing that the university is doing called the Strategic Enrollment Management Steering Committee, in charge of like recruitment, retention, and graduation rates within our lovely UConn community. So I'll update you guys on that. It's Fridays at 10 in the morning. So stay tuned for any updates on that. If you have any questions about it, feel free to contact me. That's about it though. Love you all.
Awesome. Any questions? All right. Maureen could also not be here tonight, but Annette, her chief of staff, has been giving her reports.
Hey everyone, so as Kyle said, Lorian couldn't be here, but over the past 2 weeks she has attended SCC, we had a gov board about a referendum, but that's been killed, and then that's basically it. There's not.
Does anyone have any questions?
There was also a university senate.
Thank you, Laura. We're going to jump back to academic affairs quickly, and that will be our last report.
Hello everybody, so over the past week and over break I've been reaching out to a lot of students in the ACES program, sort of getting their experience on advising. I've also reached out to the ACES program itself. What we've noticed in academic affairs and with our discussions with students is that the system that we're using for ACES students isn't helping them progress into a major or minors as seamlessly as it could. I've also been working on the disbursement request for the school supplies initiative that we're going to be doing at the beginning of next semester. And I've been continuing my work with the State Open Educational Resources Council. I'm going to be moving more towards helping them with a social media effort that will hopefully show to the state of Connecticut that open educational resources are necessary and that funding for OER is super, super important for students, as it will ultimately save like thousands of students millions of dollars. So that's pretty much it.
Any questions? All right. We'll jump into our voting items. First up is approval of our minutes from November 20th. Please make sure your name is there if you were there. Does anybody have any questions, corrections for the minutes? All right, seeing none, I will move to pass the minutes by unanimous consent. Are there any objections? The minutes are approved. Next up, we have approval of USG's January 2025 payroll batch report, and I will hand it over to Siggy.
Hello. So this is our batch payroll. Batch payroll is something that we do at least once a year. Basically what this tells us, this is a document provided by our professional staff, the trustee student organization support team. They made this document. It has all of our employees listed out, their employee IDs, record number, their termination date, which is not actually a termination date, their job titles, as well as some pending payroll authorizations. Their current hourly rate is listed in column I. So the point of batch payroll is we're giving everybody a raise starting January 1 because we're trying to keep up with inflation. UConn is increasing their student payroll numbers themselves, so it's within our best interest to keep up with that, make sure students are getting paid a competitive wage with the rest of the university, so we are hiring talent regularly. Additionally, we have pieces in our bylaws that tell us there are certain patterns on wages that we need to follow. So if UConn increases the authorized student payroll wages, then we should also be increasing our wages to keep in line with our bylaws. So column I is the current hourly rate. J is the automatic hourly rate change. What that means is if we decide to do nothing and we don't have any decisions on if we're going to give people pay raises, professional staff will do it for us and give out all of those pay raises in column J. Those, not every single one of them align with our bylaws, and because of that, you'll see that in column K, the new pay rate, if the automatic rate is not sufficient, meaning the rates that the pro staff gave, we don't believe are sufficient because they don't follow our bylaws. So here's the new rate that we want to give. Oh, yes, anybody who's a paid employee by USG, you unfortunately do have to leave the room. You can stay.
Yo,
Sorry.
All right, now the work begins.
Yeah. Oh. Okay. So you'll see there aren't a whole lot of new pay rates listed out. Kyle, would you mind scrolling? So there's a whole bunch at the bottom here. I'll give an example. So I'll give an example. On the lower bound, so the lowest class, that's usually trainee level, that's usually our student staff. They make $15.69 an hour currently. With the new pay rates, we'd like them to make $16.35. Because that is the new lower bound of class 1. As we currently have it, those students get paid the lower bound of class 1. So we want to keep up with that wage. There are 4 classes that you can be paid at UConn, and some of them have a range. They're in that top right corner in columns M and N. So you'll see we're moving from $15.69 to the new $16.35 pay scale rate. And then so you'll see lower bound of class 2 1584 is going up to $16.50. So that's the lowest amount you can be paid if you're a class 2 employee. 1644 is going up to $17.10. That is the median of class 2. So again, the assistant level job role, that is right in the middle. So 1734 is going up to $18. Those are usually our directors and some members of Gov Board go from $1734 to $18. That's considered 25 cents above the lower bound of class 3. Class 3 is our specialist level. You'll see it in row 5. And then class 3, 1809 to 1875, $1 above the lower bound of class 3. That's all of our elected officials. So these are the patterns that we usually follow. So then we have something for sustainable pay rates within our bylaws. This is what we've always done with the patterns. As this reads, so let's say, for example, SOC staff, you'll see current hourly rate is $15.69. The automatic rate change is $16.35. Oh, good, we agree with that. That aligns with our bylaws and the pattern that we've always followed. Same with 1584. They're brought up to $16.50 in the automatic hourly rate change. But if you look at the people, so let me find an example. Deputy Chief Diversity Officer, currently $16.44. The automatic rate change would be $16.50. So it doesn't really make sense for us to keep 2 different classes of jobs to the same wage when they should theoretically, one should be supervising the other. So I put in the column K, $17.10 is the new rate, because that's the new rate based on the pattern we follow in our bylaws. So it's the same for everybody else that has a column K rate. Something about the column J rate didn't make any sense for our bylaws, so yeah. What are your questions?
Smith, you have a question?
Oh.
Okay, would you mind distributing the mic?
Yeah, sorry.
Smith for the minutes. Has this been taken into consideration from the fiscal year budget that we voted on earlier this semester? And which budget has been considered, the automatic one or the new one including that? Like, has potential raises been included in those?
So yes, we did include it in the new budget. We increased 15,000, knowing there would be wage increases this year. That's a rough estimate. We usually don't spend anywhere near close to the upper bound of how much we pass for employment wages. But yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Are there any points of discussion? All right, we'll move into a hand vote. All of those in favor of approving the payroll batch, please raise your hands. Opposed? Abstentions? All right, that passes 14-0 to 1 with Mr. Key abstaining. Do they need to stay outside for the org chart?
I'll go get them.
So next up is going to be an approval of our supplemental org chart, which is also going to be presented by Sydney.
Oh, you're coming. Okay, so yes, so this is the supplemental org chart. We passed this earlier this semester. This is just giving the updates with the new pay rates that were just approved. So congratulations to all the employees who will be getting raises on January 1st. So supplemental org chart tells us the roles we have in the organization, the number of people in those roles we're allowed to have, wages, maximum, minimum hours, other authorized signers, other unimportant information that you all don't need to know. But the only thing that's changed from the supplemental org chart is the wage changes. So everything that you just passed is updated in this. Okay, so what are your questions?
Seeing no questions, are there any points of discussion? All right, I'm going to move to pass the supplemental org chart by unanimous consent. Are there any objections? The supplemental org chart is approved by unanimous consent. Next up, we have a resolution concerning Husky Village cleanliness, and I will turn it over to Caroline.
Hi everyone, my name is Caroline, and I'm the residential senator for Husky Village. And basically the situation at Husky Village is our dorms are not being cleaned. We're a traditional residence hall made up of traditional doubles, communal bathrooms, and communal living spaces such as a kitchen and a common lounge. And UConn has not been coming to the dorms to clean. Our dorms have been cleaned, by dorms I mean the hall itself, not our personal dorms. They've been cleaned on average of 2 times so far this semester, and those times have been over 2 months apart from one another. And right now it's just a public health issue. A lot of our residents are getting sick. They're not in an environment that's keeping them safe from the spread of illnesses. One person comes in the house with something and it just spreads since the surfaces aren't being cleaned properly. Residents right now are being expected to complete chores every week to try and keep a standard of cleanliness around the house. But we're busy sophomores predominantly in this community, and we're buying our own cleaning products to accomplish this. So those that can't afford cleaning products are just kind of out of luck and put at a disadvantage of getting even more sick than the rest of us. yeah, we just don't feel like it should be the responsibility of residents to clean communal bathrooms and communal living spaces. So this is asking for a weekly clean, which is already less than what traditional dorms of our tier, which is tier 4, receive. Those public areas in the other dorms are cleaned daily. We are just asking for weekly. As of right now, the residents have been willing to be okay with the weekly clean for right now. We're just trying to get some people in there because, like I said, everybody's kind of getting sick. It's interfering with schoolwork. It's a financial burden on people, and that's really just the concern for right now. Yeah.
Questions? We'll go to Josh first.
First of all, thank you for bringing this up. It is an issue that's very important. It's a violation of our Bill of Rights for this to even be happening. Do you know why this ever became the case in the first place?
I don't. I do know that this year, CFSD, which is the Center for Fraternity and Sorority Development, kind of pushed back on UConn because traditionally in years past, they would just come over break to clean, like when nobody was in the house. So it was cleaned Thanksgiving break and then spring break. And we were just expected to clean on our own time. And this year they said they were gonna come once every 2 weeks, and that hasn't even happened. They can't even commit to that. So I don't know why that started happening, but yeah, like I said, they're communal bathrooms. There's like 12 people in a bathroom right now, and they're not getting cleaned by the school. So.
Is there a reason why you're not asking for daily, so it's competitive with the, it's comparable to the other tier 4s? And if you don't get daily, you can then walk it back and say, okay, we'll compromise for a week?
From what I spoke to the residents about, a lot of them were asking for weekly and not daily. Like I said, there are 12 people in a bathroom, which is less than a regular hallway of a dorm. So I think weekly cleans would be sufficient in accomplishing, like, for less illnesses going around the house and stuff like that. I just don't think that daily's necessary. We have as few as 8 people on the first floor bathroom, which isn't like that startling. So yeah, it's just not what we really need right now.
Any other questions? Yeah, Georgia.
Does this account for cleaning of like the lounge and living rooms and kitchens and stuff as well?
Yeah, so it requires cleaning of the floors and like the furniture in the lounge as well as the furniture in the kitchen. This would cover communal bathrooms, which Husky Village homes have 4, 1 per floor, and then we have a gender neutral bathroom on the ground floor, which is accessible to everybody. It would cover the kitchen, the laundry room, and the lounge, which are all like public spaces in the house.
Any other questions? All right, any points of discussion? All right, seeing none, we will move into a hand vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? Abstentions? That passes 19-0 to 2. Kyle Lowry and Caroline Kelly abstain. Congratulations. All right, next up we have a call to action concerning the University of Connecticut's use of hospital terminology, and I will turn it over to Angelo.
Let's start this again. Hello, good afternoon. So this piece of legislation is pretty straightforward. UConn uses the term non-resident aliens to describe its international and undocumented student population. I'm not sure I need to go into full detail as to why this term is inappropriate and it's just not okay to be calling students, but I can answer any questions. One thing I do want to highlight and to really mark something that I bloated in the third whereas clause is that as an adjective, the term can be defined as unfamiliar and disturbing or distasteful. I'm not sure if that's how we should be addressing our students, but free to answer any questions or with the discussion. This is a legal term that does have to be used in certain areas, but to This is just to cover our bases in areas that are not required by law to address these students.
Avery.
What do you want to change it to?
I'm not proposing any change. That's for the university to decide. The university tends to push back on things if you give them suggestions they don't like.
Are there any other questions? Any points of discussion? All right, we'll go into another hand vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? Abstentions? All right, that is 21-0 to 2. Kyle and Alvin abstaining. All right, next up we have Sydney again with approval of USG Student Advisory and Service Fee, Student Activity and Service Fee Advisory Committee, or SASBAC packet.
Okay, I'm going to be back here for this so then I can scroll. All right, so this is the Student Activity Service Fee Advisory Committee packet that we submit to SASBAC committee. Basically, it kind of explains why USG is a valuable organization, why we deserve the fees that we receive from the student activity fees, kind of giving some direction to the budget office as to why we should continue to get the fees we currently get, or if we want a fee increase, if we should be able to get that fee increase because we can prove it. Okay, so this packet is like a really long proposal. It's 10 pages long. Wrote a lot. Also includes some financial information on there. But I want to go through and I want some feedback on ways we can express how we're valuable, services we provide, and other ways that we plan to advocate going forward that we can include in this to show them that having our money is important and that we need it. Okay, so I'm not going to read through this entire thing, but I'll give a pretty brief overview of what the essence of the narrative is. Okay, so we have our mission written out at the top here, our org chart which we've passed recently, other supplemental org chart. This is the old one because the new one's not technically in effect until January 1st. Current goals and how they align with our mission. I talk a lot about advocating for students in a variety of ways, so housing insecurity, cultural inclusion, academic accessibility, career readiness, mental health support, comfortable, welcoming environment for everybody. And I talk a bit about Tier 2 funding and making sure people are able to have a enriching co-curricular experience. Programs of services that we provide for our constituents, there are many, and I basically just list them all out, but here are some of the generic points. Tier 2 registered student organization funding, diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, undergraduate student senate, student voter registration, academic advocacy services, New York Times subscriptions, free printing, professionalism and networking events, free menstrual products, and financial support for alternative breaks through community outreach. If there are other things you'd like to include, or we can include some descriptions, we can definitely talk about that in discussion after this. So who is eligible to partake? Undergraduate students of the Stores campus, we pay the student activity fee, so pretty much everybody pays that fee here. There are some cases where students are learning in Hartford as well as here or some other campus that may not necessarily be paying that fee. So for what purpose do you spend any portion of your budget on the operations of your organization? I talk a bit about employees, member retention, meetings, equipment upgrades and renovations, as well as unexpected damages and making sure we pay for those things. 38% of our budget is operations. Then I give a breakdown of the hourly wages of our employees with numbers and facts and wages. Those are the old wages still. Again, they're not in effect until January 1st. Paying non-student staff, we do pay $300,000 to professional staff so they can support us with legal matters, ethical matters, advising, They help us with all of our PRs, funding requests, everything financial and accounting you could possibly think of. Percentage of our budget from programs and services for students sponsored by our organization, 18% of our budget. That's all of our advocacy and programming and other things. So determining if these programs meet our expectations, I talk about filling out data surveys, and I give an example that Olivia Veal, our lovely academic affairs director, provided earlier today. I gave some examples of the types of responses we received, some specific data. We received 1,200 responses. This is what we learned. This is how we went forward. Improving social media communications, communicating with child mental health initiatives, and increasing Tier 2 funding from those surveys. So showing some clear reasons that we do evaluate what students want and try to address them. For groups that fund Tier 2 student organizations, what percent of the budget is allocated? 44%. And then significant changes in the overall budget for this fiscal year. I talked about $15,000 increase for wages, and then the dramatic Tier 2 funding increase by $200,000 due to the high demand. I talked about some generic supplies, equipment, contracted services, refreshments also had some increases, but nothing super significant. Current fee amount per semester per year is $45. Does the organization receive income from any source other than student fees? No. Top organization operational expenditures, I have them listed: student wages, non-student wages, contractual services for the organization. Okay. How these expenses are similar to or different from the previous year. Wages increased, everything else is about the same. Organizational expenditures for programs and services funded. Again, just listing out promotional items, refreshments, supplies, contractual services. So this is all based on our current operations budget as well as our programming budget. And then I talk a lot about how they're similar or different from previous years, going into very specific things like this line item went from $40,000, no, this line item, this line item, $40,000 for menstrual products contributes to the supplies, $40,000 for finals care fair also contributes to supplies, etc. It's very specific. I also explain why we have such a large, stark difference in our programming expenditures from years past, because we do change pretty significantly year to year as the administrations change and they make different decisions on how they want to spend the money. Which is different from most departments in the university that have a pretty consistent operation expenses over time. Top expenditures for Tier 2 organizations: travel, equipment, contractual services, and registration fees always. Expenses are similar or different from the previous year. I give out very specific numbers that I pulled earlier today, actually, on travel costs that we spent so far, contractual services, registration and entry fees, and equipment as well. I also talk about how we plan to stop funding travel once we are $200,000 away from our cap on Tier 2 funding, and what that means for a difference in expenditures. Organizational priorities. I talk about enhancing our support of Tier 2 organization, prioritizing pressing advocacy initiatives, housing and security, mental health services, diversity, equity, and inclusion. If there are others you'd like to include, I definitely encourage that you please say something. If we're seeking a fee increase, I say yes. And I think we should talk some more about this as well. The dollar amount I'm suggesting we request is $5 per semester, which is $10 a year. And that does sound like quite a steep increase. But the rationale for the requested increase, I go in a lot of depth here about why we deserve some more money. The bulk of it is about Tier 2 funding and how we are just seeing year after year, Tier 2 funding is flying out of the bank faster than literally anything else we do. And it's just gotten to the point where we just cannot physically support Tier 2s the way we'd like to, or the way that's even necessary for them to operate. So talked a lot about that, gave some figures. We've already approved over $800,000. This is 80% of our funding. We reached $800,000 in February last year, and we've already reached it early December this year, which says a lot. Talk about some statistics on how many funding requests we received, groups that have requested funding, as well as we allow up to $15,000 per group to request money from us. I talk a bit about how there are new space rental expenses on campus, decisions that have been made this year by administration. There's a $1,000 usage fee per student group to use Jorgensen's Theater, which is brand new, and they have about 20 student groups that we can expect will probably be using that space and need money to support that. And then another $40,000 or so worth of Holly Armory space. The union doesn't pay for the Holly Armory anymore. And apparently they charge people. So that's a new expenditure that we may have to anticipate. That's actually starting in the spring semester. That's starting next semester. I talk a bit about off-campus rental expenses as a result, because there just is not enough space for student groups to meet on campus anymore. We can't keep up with the volume of student groups that are being created every year, and our funding hasn't increased in years. So it's just not feasible for us to enhance their co-curricular experience, and we're putting people at risk that, certain people that can't afford to do things will continue to attempt those activities that are expensive and leave behind the people that just can't afford to do them, which is not right. I talk a lot about that. I also talk about how we no longer have our Praxis bank account. So that's that second bank account we inherited from an organization called Praxis that folded in on itself probably 5 years ago. 2 years ago?
2022.
Really? Oh, 2 years ago. Never mind. So we inherited all that money. And we have pretty much none of it left at the end of this year. That pays for $60,000 in printing and $20,000 in New York Times subscriptions. It's a big expense and service that we offer that will have to be covered by the USG budget itself, which is not necessarily feasible for next year. We might have to get creative with that though. So I talk a lot about how we have no PERG money. That's not good for these important services that we offer. Printing was very popular last year. We used over $56,000 worth of it, kind of trying to demonstrate the popularity of these things and why they're important to people. And then I talk about how while we like to bring the fee increase towards Tier 2 funding groups, we just want to make sure we're not cutting additional programming and advocacy, because that is kind of the core of our mission. Steps we've taken to reduce expenses, I talk about cutting positions, the $200,000 remaining in the Tier 2 funding cap rule that we made this year. I've been stricter on exemptions. I can't remember the last time I've granted a Tier 2 funding exemption, and much stricter on deadlines for those things. And people must be policy compliant to receive their funding. People have voiced to Brian and myself that they're very frustrated about this, so we know that they're seeing an increase in a lack of exemptions and things that aren't getting funded now that were funded in previous years. Steps to increase revenue: we don't generate revenue. Then I go on a long spiel about the outcome or consequence of not receiving the fee increase. Essentially, Tier 2 funding we wouldn't be able to keep up with it. The number of student groups that are formed on campus increases every year. If we don't keep up with that number for funding, we can't support these groups. Obviously, student groups will at some point in the future, if we don't get a fee increase, get very angry about this and cause some kind of, say something about it and make sure we're advocating on behalf of them. So it's probably best to get ahead of that and request the fee increase now instead of when that happens. I talk a bit about how club sports is about 41% of our budget last year for Tier 2 funding, and how they're only 6% of groups, and how the rec has made it clear to us that they are not willing to increase their financial support of club sports. So we looked elsewhere for money, did not get it. Less travel participation in sports leagues, which is not good for an athletic university. and we just simply cannot keep up with the volume of RSOs anymore. And then I talk a bit about how we're going to restructure, we would have to restructure the funding system to be, instead of a system of equality, it's going to have to be a system of equity instead, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I can imagine if we say, well, you get funding from outside sources, we're going to cut your cap to $3,000, people are not going to be very happy because that's a pretty significant decrease. Groups that don't get funding from outside sources would still be allowed, probably 10 to 15,000. So that would kind of be how that equitable system would work. But I'm sure that would cause some upset feelings. Timing anomalies with reporting income and expenditures. Sometimes we have some rollover in Tier 2 travel requests into the next fiscal year. And those hit our accounts later, so that's kind of one of the anomalies that we face. If we carry over our funds from one year to the next, the ideal minimum level I put is $150,000. I basically talk about if something emergent happens, something we did not expect, if there are damages that we need to cover, that money would be there. If we go over on Tier 2 funding, that money would be there. So they asked, but if we're carrying a fund balance, what is the plan to bring down that fund balance? We had a pretty substantial fund balance this past year. It was about $550,000, which is a lot. Ideally, we're supposed to be spending our annual income down to $0. So, but that's kind of how our budget is set up, though. It allows you guys some creative freedom to follow the advocacy avenues that you care about most and make choices throughout the year. So our budget offers some vague options to use money on different initiatives, but some committees may decide, actually, I don't really want to take that direction. We're going to do something else instead, so they just wouldn't use the money, but it's there. And that's usually how that happens. But so I talk about how the plan is to make sure Tier 2 money is getting increased where necessary, getting more money there, and then our projected balance at the end of the year. And then I have 2 fee budget projection spreadsheets. I don't know if you have access to these. Yeah, I don't think I'm allowed to give you access to them either. Okay, our fee budget projections, basically it has our operating budget on it. It also has projected balances for the 2 years after. I gave some educated guesses on what I think their expenses will be for fiscal year 26 and 27. It also kind of shows if we don't get a fee increase, this is what will get cut. And it's a lot of programming stuff. Okay. So that is the overview of our narrative here. It's very Tier 2 funding heavy, but what are your questions, comments, or concerns?
Are there any questions on this packet? We'll go Josh and Olivia.
I just want to emphasize what Sydney said about PERG, because we had the ability to have that additional money from their $5 a year fee increase, and that's where the basis for our $5 comes from, is that we can supplement off of the fee balance that would have gone to PERG that no longer is coming into the university. And there are remaining funds in PERG. It's less than $200, and it's going to roll into our account. But we need to make sure that the initiatives that were being funded by PERG and that were in line with PERG's mission are still being served on this campus. So like free printing, like the New York Times subscription, like initiatives that help with homelessness and with hunger and initiatives like that, some of which now fall under student services, and making sure we can still pay for those.
Thanks, Josh. Olivia?
So I have one question. So in terms of us making income, was there some sort of small income that we get from like a cappella?
It doesn't hit our account balances. Like, we only see bank account interest. Honestly, I don't really know where that money goes. And I don't think pro staff has reported it to us.
I had a second question, comment actually. So in terms of like the New York Times subscriptions, a really good number is the fact that we have 5,000 students on those subscriptions, which is a quarter of the student body, and compared to peer institutions with similar programs with the New York Times, our rates are like very good. So that might be something to support.
All right, Nick Kafka.
Nick Kafka minutes. So I know you were talking about the fact that you don't want to be in a position to tell an organization that like, hey, since you have X amount of outside funding, we're only going to give you that amount. My opinion, and just strictly my opinion, feel free to disagree with me, but I feel like that's reasonably what we should do because of the fact that we're almost at reaching the point where we have to cut travel costs just to save us some money. I'm worried that come next semester we're gonna blow through that $200,000 pretty quickly, and I feel like it'll just be bad all around if like come let's say like March or something, we're like, oops, sorry, we're all out of funding again. I just feel like it just would be a smart way to do that. And I know it's not as will be putting us in a position to be like, oh well, we give them more, but not you more. But I feel like that's just frankly how it should be.
Okay.
Smith?
Smith for the minutes. I just have a question. I wonder if it's by law. Are we not allowed to receive revenue through any other means than the student fee?
I don't believe we are allowed to, according to trustee policy. We get our student activity fees, we can't fundraise, we get interest from those, but that's pretty much it.
Thank you.
There are some ways that we can generate revenue. Not like Marketplace. I don't know if anyone's ever bought merch from their school or college. That's a way that we can do it. It doesn't fit really within USG's mission to do that. And there are cases like we're going to talk about later today, how organizations like PERG were able to receive donations and have that be part of their fund balance. But again, also not within the scope of USG. But there are ways the trustee orgs can have separate accounts and receive revenue. But for us, it's not something that's within our mission to do.
Thank you, Josh. Are there any other questions or comments on the SASFAC packet? Yeah.
Nick Kafka for minutes. So I know that we're gonna. So just kind of another question I was thinking of. So if you don't go do that through that route where you want to tell organizations that like you only get X amount of funding, do you think it would probably be a good idea, or if it's allowed to, once we reach that $800,000 mark, we lower the amount of money they can request by like instead of $15,000, just $10,000, just to give us a little extra wiggle room and to stretch it out longer, or is that not allowed to do?
I mean, like in the middle of the year, it's probably not a great thing to do because you're just kind of pulling. You're right. They're not necessarily guaranteed 15,000. They can request up to 15,000, but I feel like that might be pulling the rug out from under some people. Some people have already hit their cap of 15,000 too, so that would be a little unfair to people that haven't.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Sticky, is there anything specific you want to feedback on?
Are there any other, so the list of programs in this first question. Oh, yeah, I also wanted feedback on the fee increase. So I was thinking $5 increase, that's $5 a semester, but the university has approved student activities get a $6 a semester increase, which is not a whole lot. It's for any student activities department. So any of the other tier 3 organizations, that includes us, and student activity, or not actually, no, not student activities, any of the student activity tier 3 organizations, and there are 6 of us. I know 2 of the others are requesting a fee increase, so I'm a little hesitant maybe to ask for the full $5, but theoretically the committee could just say, well, we won't give you the full $5 increase, we'll give you $3 instead. I was thinking maybe it would be a smarter idea if we did $3 an increase instead of $4, because then they'll be, oh, okay, well, that's a little more realistic or more share the wealth friendly. But any of those options are honestly fine, so do you have any additional thoughts on the $5 increase, or if you think it should be lowered? $5 means about $200,000 extra for the year.
Are there any thoughts on that? John, go ahead.
I mean, personally, I feel like in terms of like asking for a fee increase, I feel like I lean more towards the side of like ask for more, and then if they give us less, that's fine. I feel like if we limit ourselves at 3, then maybe there is a possibility they could give us more.
Yes.
Andrew?
Nick, I'm from this. I think the $5 amount right now is good enough because I feel like it's more realistic instead of going big with asking more money. So I think $5 is good. Right.
Angela?
Alright, this might sound crazy. But I would say a $3 increase just because our sister organizations, our sister tier 3 organizations probably do need a fee increase just as much as we do. They also have students that have that are getting paid. They have objectives that they need to carry out their own missions. And just as we have a lot of missions and aspirations, so do these tier 3 organizations. They have to represent their student bodies as well. So I would just keep that in mind.
John?
I was curious, how much of a fee increase would we need to cover the costs of losing the Praxis account?
So let's assume $80,000 compensation. That would need to be at least $2 just to cover Praxis, and that's no tier 2 funding involved.
Are there any other questions or points of discussion? All right, Siggy, do you have any other questions or topics you wanted to throw out before we move to a vote?
Are there any other pertinent services that we offer that you'd like to include under this first question? So I have tier 2 funding, DEI initiatives, undergrad senate, student voter registration, academic advocacy services, New York Times subscriptions, free printing, professionalism, networking, free menstrual products, and financial support for alternative breaks.
Angela?
Oh.
No worries. I would maybe just emphasize the culture fair, Marcus, and maybe provide an estimate of how far students would have to travel for a cultural grocery store to acquire those cultural foods, just to emphasize the point of how hard it is to get cultural foods and to combat food insecurity.
Does anyone else have any comments on that or questions? Josh?
Taking his point, taking Josh's point because it pertains to me, just under the services tab, just mentioning the Plan B that we pay for with Shaw is big. $15,000 worth of Plan B for all SOAR's undergraduate students.
I'm so sorry,
That's
how could I
important.
forget?
Thanks, Gabriel.
How could you forget me?
Any other comments? Josh, go ahead.
I'm gonna move to amend this packet to add a section on Plan B.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, the amendment is taken as friendly, so it will be accepted without a formal vote. Are there any other comments? All right, Siggy, we're going to bring the board moving to a vote. Okay, we are going to move into a hand vote on the SASPAC packet as amended. All those in favor, please raise your hands. All those opposed? Abstentions? That is approved 18 to 0 to 2. Kyle Lowry, Nick Kafka abstained. All right, last up for, or one more voting item after this, an act concerning the referendum procedure, and I will invite Angela up to present.
Hey besties, how are we doing? I said that 3 times already, or I'm losing my mind. This is just to add another bylaw in its entirety into our bylaws for referendum procedure. This would just govern how USG would go about executing referendums, when a referendum is needed, and why referendums are of use to the organization. For those who might not know what a referendum is, it is basically like a survey that is sent out to the entire student body that collects feedback of where USG should kind of direct its advocacy, just because sometimes us as students have our own personal opinions and our own personal things that we want to carry out, but at the same time, it's a good way to just keep ourselves in check and make sure that we're equitably and just, keeping in mind of our student body and how they're perceiving issues on campus. So I think that's pretty much the highlight of it, right?
Yeah, just, do you want to quickly explain what the procedure would be?
Oh, sure. So basically, anyone that wants to do a referendum would have to write a legislation as to why the referendum is needed. It would have to pass through Senate by a 2/3 majority and then Gov Board by a 2/3 majority, right? Yeah.
By majority of membership.
Majority of membership, sorry, excuse me. So I think, does that cover it? My bad. I really should be looking at this. Oh, one thing that I really, really want to emphasize is that it needs to be accessible to students with disabilities. Like, accessibility is a big thing that I'm passionate about, as many are on campus too, but that is something that I really want to emphasize.
Before we open up the floor, I will just remind everyone that this is the piece of legislation that we had someone come to address us in public comment regarding. I will recognize Josh now.
All right, I'm going to make a motion to amend 3A to add a line above the vote for Senate, saying that the referendum must pass through the Internal Affairs Committee, and I want to emphasize that the referendum must first pass the Internal Affairs Committee before proceeding to either Senate or Gov Board.
Is there a second? All right, so there is a motion to amend made by Josh, seconded by Ahmed, to add under 3A. Hang on, I'm just going to type out the amendment quickly. Okay, so we have an amendment to add 3A subpoint 1. The referendum must first pass through the Internal Affairs Committee. Does that satisfy the maker of the motion?
Can you just clarify majority vote?
Sure. All right, so we are now in discussion only on the motion to amend. Are there any questions or points of discussion on this motion specifically? John?
I just want to ask, does it need to go through the Internal Affairs Committee specifically, or could it be any committee?
As it stands right now, it could be any committee. This motion would require it to be the Internal Affairs Committee.
Okay.
Angela?
I'm not sure if requiring it to go through internal might be a little bit constraining. I think that issues that pertain to the student body may be covered in our advocacy committees, but that's something to just think about. I'm not sure how everyone else feels about that.
Real?
I want to build off of what Angela said. I agree that the referendum matters, depending on what it be, may pertain to a specific committee, and I think having the ability to go to that committee that pertains to that referendum would make sense compared to just limiting it to internal.
Josh?
I just want to clarify, maybe we can amend this motion, amend the amendment, but it can go through another committee. It just has to first go through Internal Affairs, because it's within Internal Affairs' mission to consider things that affect the org. And if you scroll down to the last line of this bylaw, is that this is how USG is going to operate. Like, this is the advocacy that we're going to do on an internal basis. This is we're directing employees. This is how you have to advocate. This is how you're going to guide your advocacy.
Any other points of discussion on the amendment? Angela?
I would argue that every single committee does that too. That every single committee has the job of looking out for the student body's best interest. I don't think that limiting just the internal is something that is equitable.
Nina?
I'm just gonna say, like Josh said, it is internals, or like at least I thought it was internals' goal to like do all of the government stuff, like do all of the USG stuff. And like if this is USG's mission and it's gonna be guided by what the students want, then shouldn't it go through internal first and then it can go through whatever committee it has relation to? Sorry, that wasn't worded correctly, but yeah, anyone, I don't know.
We'll go to Jabril, then Josh.
I agree with that, but also kind of the referendums does deal with the internal governmental aspect, but there also a lot of the matters are related to advocacy as well. And I think limiting it to only internal might be, I'll just let Josh know that was my point.
Wait, can I respond to that really quickly? I don't think that we should limit it to just internal. I think it should start with internal only because USG is going to be guiding itself based on the responses to this. But then after internal, it should go through any other committee.
Yeah, that's the intention of the amendment, is it has to first go through internal. That's why I specified it must first pass through internal.
Angela?
And then I think that raises a question as to whether all call to actions or anything relating to USG putting their name on something to be passed through internal first. Currently, not all call to actions and things that USG puts their name on goes through internal first. I think that's something to know.
Carolyn?
I also just want to point out that this would be an extra hoop for the referendum to jump through, especially in like a time-sensitive situation. This would make it a lot more difficult to get passed in an effective amount of time.
Yes, I will quickly expand on that point. So just for context, the way legislation works right now is the typical procedure is committee and then Senate, but there is a rule that allows the speaker to bypass that for time-sensitive matters. This would add a restriction to referendums that would not allow the speaker to do that for referendums, which is something to consider, that it would add an extra time factor into the process. But referendums are also obviously a large decision, so that is something that the Senate might consider reviewing. Josh?
I would argue that the legislation bylaw and the way that that power comes to the speaker could still waive this under that same bylaw. But I'll let Andy, if he wants to jump in on that.
Andy, correct me if I'm wrong, but the speaker does not have the power to waive bylaws.
The speaker's bylaw has the power to waive the requirement that it be forwarded by a committee or the governing board. Right here, 3A.
It does in fact say that.
Okay, so Andy, your opinion is that if this passes, that provision would override that essentially?
I mean, yeah, it's in the bylaw.
Okay. Nick?
Nick after this. Yeah, I feel like I kind of agree with Angela on this. I feel like, and I don't know who said it also. I feel like it's no need to complicate this even further. Like I do think internal is very important, but I think the fact that that they should go through a committee that's specifically on what it has to deal with, and then go through. They can go out through whatever process next. That's just my opinion.
Any other Nick?
Nick Lonsman for the minutes. I would just say that if you require it to go through internal first, then it gets rid of any reason why it would go to any of the other committees. Because if it goes through internal, then it can just go right to Senate. So, and then also if it goes through internal and then another committee and then through Senate, it's like, and then it's got to go through Gov Board. Oh my God, I didn't even know we had that many committees.
Anyone else? Jabril?
Yeah, kind of just building off of that again, like making it go through internal would kind of bypass any need to go through a committee. And again, if the referendum is related to any information pertaining the advocacy committee, that cuts out important feedback pertinent to what's in the material that would be important to get to pass. Yeah.
All right. Any other points of discussion? All right, we'll move into a hand vote on the amendment. So a vote of yes is to include the provision that the referendum must first pass through the Internal Affairs Committee by majority vote. A vote of no is to leave the legislation as it was originally written and not include that clause. All those in favor of the amendment, please raise your hands. All right, all those opposed? All abstaining? All right, that fails 7 to 9 to 1 with me abstaining. Oh, I'm sorry, 2 abstaining. Tommy and I abstaining. All right. So now we are back into discussion on the legislation itself. Caroline, do you have something?
I was just wondering if you can clarify the importance of the word directly, as that was what was brought up as an issue in public comment, if that's really needed there and what point that serves.
So the issue brought up in public comment specifically was that Allison, who spoke in public comment, was worried that the word directly may limit the issues that a referendum could be proposed on, arguing that certain issues do not have an immediate direct effect on students but are still important. I met with her before the meeting and she raised the example of climate change as being something that affects students, but that someone may make the argument does not directly affect students. So she wanted to remove that to avoid any arguments of that nature.
Yeah, I was wondering why it was put there, like in the first place, like if there was like an intention behind using that word.
There was no intention. Empty thoughts for that particular line. Feel free if any senator wants to motion to get that out of there. Happy hit.
Nick Everett, I want a motion to remove, to strike directly from 1B, please.
Angela, is that taken as friendly?
I don't believe in friendly amendments, so no.
Okay, is there a second? All right, seconded by Shahar. Is there any discussion? All right, I will move to accept the amendment by unanimous consent. Are there any objections? All right, the amendment passes. Are there any other points of discussion on the legislation? Angela?
I would recommend also a senator amend that line where internal affairs used to be to just a committee. As the person in public comment did say, that for students outside of USG may not understand entirely of what this bylaw is asking of us to do, and an outside person may not read the legislation bylaw that specifically dictates that a piece of legislation has to pass through an internal committee or a USG committee.
I just want to motion what was just said.
Okay. So the motion has been made by Shahar, seconded by Josh. All right, is there any discussion on the amendment? Josh?
Can we just clarify majority vote?
Any other questions, points of discussion on the amendment? All right, I will move to amend by unanimous consent. Are there any objections? Seeing none, the amendment is accepted. Are there any other points of discussion on the legislation? Angela, go ahead.
I also wanted to point out, because I forgot to before, that there is a section about communication that strictly dictates that USG has to release the referendum vote total if it is disclosed to USG to our sister Tier 3 organizations, the Daily Campus, UCTV, and WUS, our media Tier 3 organization, just so that we can continue to be transparent outside of USG scope.
I also, if you could scroll down to 4, referendum threshold. So it's saying that if at least 15% of UConn students, or like if not, wait, what is it? If less than 15% of UConn students vote in this, then we will not get the results from that and nothing will happen. So we only get results if more than 15% of students fill out the referendum. Just wanted to emphasize that.
Josh?
So I asked this question in internal, and I just want to ask it here and see if people have an opinion on it. Should we clarify how we're getting the number of fee-paying students? so we have a consistent source of where that information is coming from. Because I'm going to suggest that we get it from the bursar's office, because the comptroller, USG's comptroller's office gets that number every semester when we get the fee balance.
Tony?
I think that's a wonderful suggestion.
I'm going to move to amend 4A to specify as determined by the Office of the Bursar.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, we're going to move to accept by unanimous consent. Are there any objections? The amendment passes. Any other points of discussion? Smith, go ahead.
Hey, I'll submit for the minutes. I'd like to bring out just as a discussion point, and possibly, is there, I don't see any process to amend a potential referendum, like in the same way we are amending this bill in front of us. Do you think there should be a way to amend referendums during these discussions?
I think that referendums can only be amended when they're up for vote. Once they're passed, don't touch it. Like, it would be incredibly unethical for USG to be amending something after it passed through certain committees, especially one of Senate and Gov Board.
Sorry, can you clarify? Are we able to amend it during our Senate vote, per se?
So, because of referendum has to be introduced as a piece of legislation, it can be amended.
Thank you.
Josh?
I think that we should clarify under 5 that referendums may be amended as any piece of legislation, and as such, the changes to existing policy section of legislation bylaw applies, which means that Senate can by 2/3 vote repeal any policy or change any policy that existed even after it's passed. So I'm going to move to add a section 5B that specifies that referendums may be amended or repealed just like existing policy or legislation.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, we will move to accept that by unanimous consent. Josh, will you do me a favor and type that out? Any other discussion?
Okay, so one thing about this is that I feel as though if students are taking a survey or a questionnaire of any kind regarding any issue, there's a chance that they don't exactly know what is being asked of them. So Angela, this is kind of directed at you because you are an author, but would it be possible to add some sort of thing saying that we have to provide context or background information as to what is being asked? Because I feel like a lot of people don't know what's going on. Yeah, I don't know how that would work. Would we add a new section, section 9 or something, requiring context, or maybe in language and phrasing add a 5C, and yeah. Okay, so something along the lines of make sure to provide context and background information.
Shahab?
I feel like one thing that could be helpful with that is if near the question or in the question itself it's stating a simple kind of fact relating to it, as long as it's not leaning one way or another.
While I agree, I think that would be most efficient. There's a risk that we won't have enough words to explain what is going on. There are some issues that are a lot more complicated and can't be explained in one sentence. I very much agree with you, but I think if there can be a whole section before any questions are asked, just giving background information, that would be really cool.
All right, is there a motion to amend?
Add section 5C.
So just have a context and background information must be provided along with the referendum questions. Is there a second?
Second again.
Any discussion on the amendment? Olivia?
I do think there's a concern with not inherently providing context and background information, it's just the fact that there are certain issues that nobody will ever agree a neutral phrasing is going to be applicable. in terms of providing background information, so I'm not sure about how that's going to be factored in or just in generally approved by a body.
I would say that maybe add the same language that we do in I forgot where it is, but it's about as neutral as possible. I forgot what section it is, but there's a particular section in here. Is it 5A? 5A, thank you. That talks about neutrality and making sure that we're keeping a concentration on that. Yeah. Oh, that's so crazy. It's like literally right there.
Shahad, then Nick.
Instead of saying it must be provided, could we say it can be provided if the whoever's passing it feels it's appropriate to include it?
I would just I would just maybe just like contact and background information should be provided, like strongly encouraging, because I think it never hurts to let people know what they're about to fill a questionnaire out about.
Olivia?
I agree with Shahad. I don't think it should be mandatory to provide information. I can just see that causing a lot of issues in the future with getting referendums passed on any topic. But I think a strong suggestion would be beneficial.
Nick?
Nick Hefferman. Two things. One, kind of just going off of what Olivia said. I personally think it is good. It should have context, even if it's small, one sentence thing, just giving a brief little thing of what it's about. It would be good just for anyone, actually going through the past legislation itself, or to vote on the referendum. But my second question is, who would be the one to provide the background information and context? Would it be the person that makes the referendum, or would it be like USG during something like this? I just clarification on that for just my sake.
I envision that being the voting body of whenever it's being passed, or the author would come up with a draft and then it would be discussed during whatever committee it goes through and then sent it. I don't know if that's a bad idea.
So the person who makes the amendment, they provide their own the background information for what's getting passed, and then it will be added onto it.
Yeah, and they try their best to stick to these policies, remaining as neutral as possible.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Is the consensus that we want to leave this as should be instead of must be? Okay. Are there any other comments on the amendment? All right, I will move to Bill.
I don't know if we have to specify, but I think one important thing is when we're giving background information, a lot of the issues are very nuanced, and we said it'd be difficult to be completely neutral, but that's another thing. Also, just trying to prevent having a wall of text that someone clicks into and they're like, okay, I don't want to read any of this. I think that's just something important to keep in mind. That is a very real thing. Keeping things nice and concise.
I also don't think that we should necessarily assume that students are unaware about certain issues. It can't be said for everything that some people just don't understand certain histories or the context of certain issues, which is true, but I also don't think that's entirely accurate because a lot of students are well informed about issues. So again, just that it should be provided, maybe not 100% necessary is my opinion.
I am okay with the should, and I also agree that there should not be a block of text, but I would rather aim on the cautious side and try to cater to the people that don't know, even if it's not the majority of students. Those are still people that will access it and be filling it out, and I want them to know what they're filling out.
Any other points of discussion on the amendment? Gabriel?
Sorry, so when we are doing referendums and then we're having that piece of legislation attached with the context, can we not just use that as the background information for the referendum? Would that not be very easy since it's already written and provides background context to the referendum questions?
I mean, yeah, if you think it provides enough context. If you're a 5-year-old and you're reading it, would you understand it?
I think that's a pretty good rule of thumb.
Not actually 5 rule, that was an exaggeration, but you know what I'm saying.
My understanding would be that the legislation would provide what context, if any, is being offered with the referendum. Does that sound accurate to everyone? Anyone else on the amendment? Okay, we're going to move into a hand vote on the amendment to add context and background information should be provided with the referendum questions. All those in favor of the amendment, please raise your hands. All those opposed? All abstaining? That is 13 to 1 to 3, Kyle, Tommy, and Shahad abstaining. So that amendment is accepted. Are there any points of discussion on the legislation itself? Seeing none, we'll move into a hand vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? Abstentions? That passes 17-0 to 1 with just me abstaining. All right, congratulations, Angelo. What? No. Next up, we have a motion to disperse $481.63 from the Office of the President's charity line item to donate to the Wyndham No Free Shelter. I will recognize Sadie.
Hey everybody, sorry. So, this is $481.63. The Praxis account won't exactly total up to zero. The remaining funds projected are $481.63. Because we're just, what would we even do with that money? We figured it would be within Praxis's mission, within the goods of our heart, to donate the rest of this money to the Wyndham No Free Shelter. Praxis technically has an additional $100 somewhere else, but we're not allowed to donate it because it goes to a different account. So this is money that we can donate. I don't think we have any other real reason to use it because everything that comes out of Praxis has to go towards advocating for human needs. So that's kind of what this is about.
Any questions or points of discussion? Josh, go ahead.
So USG currently oversees 3 bank accounts. One is the USG account that you all pay fees into. One is the Praxis account that Praxis paid fees, that people who paid Praxis's fees paid fees into. And the third one is the Praxis Hunger and Homelessness account, which got donations placed into it. And because of the nature of how those funds came into that account, we can't spend them on anything except for what they were donated to do, which in this case is supporting homelessness and providing for the shelter. This is a place that those funds have gone to in the past. And all that these funds have done so far is collect interest. And something that we are aiming to do this year is close out those accounts. With the case of this account, we're going to donate the full balance, which is the $480. And the $123 are in the other account. At the end of this fiscal year, we got CFO approval and TSOS approval to fold it into the USG account. So both of those accounts are going to close at the end of this year.
All right, Angela, did you have something? Any other questions or points of discussion? Caroline?
So I think that this is a great idea. Obviously, I was just wondering if you could provide a little bit more context as to what this shelter does and where the money is going to go, like specifically what is it going to provide?
That's an awesome question, to be honest. So it is a homeless shelter. I won't lie, I don't know a whole lot about it. We have partnered with them before. Josh, are you searching it right now? Yes, you are? Okay, great. We have partnered with them before. We know it goes to those living in their homeless shelter or using their housing support services. More specific question?
Angela, did you have okay, sorry.
Okay, so this is their present values. What started as an all-volunteer effort has grown into a fully staffed year-round operation offering a seasonal, no-freeze shelter, November through April, and a year-round walk-in hospitality center. Hospitality center is open for people to access help that will get them housed and back on their feet, take showers, secure personal and hygiene supplies, access community services, complete 211 intakes, and temporarily store personal items. So they do lots of things for that population. So definitely very important work.
Any other questions, points of discussion? All right, we'll move into a hand vote. All those in favor? All right, all those opposed? Abstentions? All right, that is approved 17-0 to 1, just me abstaining. We are done with our voting items. Thank you. So for discussion, we have the state of diversity, and I'll invite Angela up to present.
Hello, good afternoon. My bad. So every single year, USG does our state of diversity, and today National Poland, our Chief Diversity Officer, could not be with us today, so she gave me a little letter to read to all of you. Hello, everyone. I'm so sorry I couldn't make it today. My health got the best of me. However, I did not want to leave you all with the burning anticipation of our fall 2024 state of diversity results. As noticed, the forum is collecting data on the entirety of USG, not just Senate. We aim to have our numbers match the universities. With that said, overall, we have had a lot of new faces. The org is still a majority white organization, roughly 50-50 male and female, 28 identifying with the LGBTQI+ community, and 65% of in-state students. Overall, the feeling towards USG is positive. Some comments worth noting are being more inclusive with our newer members, focusing more on diversity throughout advocacy rather than just hiring, and more transparency. I will be discussing these results with our governing board to guide us on our work for the next semester. Is there any questions?
Does anyone have any questions? If anyone does have any questions that they would like to ask Tay, you can reach her on Slack, or her email is diversity@usg.uconn.edu. So we'll now move into announcements. First up is Senate class, spring 2025.
Hi, you guys have heard me talk about this a million times, but if you're interested in the Senate class, text me. It's really fun and really easy. You get credit and you get a letter grade. It's really good.
Next up, we have scheduled senator check-ins. I have a few slots open tomorrow. I'll also be opening slots over the break. And you can reach out to me at any time if you want to book a meeting. Our holiday party is tomorrow at 7 p.m. in the USG lounge. That is Student Union 218, just downstairs of that little staircase. Then we have Josh, University Senate Parliamentarian.
So, for those of you that may or may not know, academic regulations at the university are regulated by the University Senate, and a way that students can get involved with the University Senate is they could become a university senator, like some of our elected officials are, or they can become a committee rep, or they can become the parliamentarian of the University Senate, which is a role that I have been lucky enough to have for the last year and almost 3 months. And it's a role that you get to learn more about how the university operates and how the different policies work. So if you're interested in academic affairs, you're interested in working in legislative affairs and how rules of order work, this is a place that you can learn about all of those policies and procedures. And you get a chance to have an impact on how that body functions, and you get to answer questions and get to work on critical thinking skills. Like the Senate course, you can get credit for it. There are 2 different ways you can get credit for it. You can get it from pass-fail, or you can get it for letter grade. It depends on basically what amount of time you're willing to take on of doing work beyond going to just the Senate meetings. The Senate meetings are once a month. You would start in next semester, you would come to the March and April meetings, and you would shadow me, and you would get a chance to learn what the position is about. And then if you wanted it and you're interested in it, you could say you're interested, and most likely you're going to get it. But if you're interested, you can ask me any questions either now or you can Slack me.
Thanks, Josh. Next up, Julia.
let me up here, guys. Announcement E. Doesn't have a slide because I texted Kyle a little late. But the, kind of just to, what's the word? Expand on the pop-up pantry this Friday, December 6th from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. in the USG Student Body Lounge. You're just on the second floor, you go up those little steps, our office is right there. It's beautiful, it's the greatest thing you've ever seen. Free snacks, it's gonna be great, and it's a good way to get some fuel for finals, as we call it these days. That's all I have for you guys. Take care. And if I don't see you, have a great winter break. And I love all of you guys so much, and it's all right here. This too. Take this mic away from me, guys.
All right, thanks, Jabril. Our last announcement is just good luck on finals. Have a great break. Thank you all for coming.